In Ontario, as in several American states, the Great Lakes region is a massive economic engine. It generates trillions in gross domestic product and millions of jobs. But with the border mostly closed during this COVID-19 pandemic, the region is looking for help to bounce back. With us to look at that in St. Catharines, Ontario, Mayor Walter Sendzik, who is also vice chair of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. In Ottawa, Mark Fisher, president and CEO of the Council of the Great Lakes region. And in Mississauga, my old hood, Gail Krantzberg, professor of engineering and public policy at McMaster University in Hamilton. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Nice to be here.
Mayor Sendzik, I'll start with you. What is the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative?
So it is an organization made up of mayors from both the American side and the Canadian side, and primarily in Ontario and Quebec. And we have about 125 mayors that make up the city's initiative. And our focus is on preserving, protecting the Great Lakes Basin from the Great Lakes all the way into the St. Lawrence.
And Mark, when we talk about the Great Lakes region, what exactly does it include apart from the Great Lakes?
Sure. Well, it's an incredible region. On the U.S. side, it encompasses 8 Great Lakes states from New York to Minnesota. And then on the Canadian side, it includes the provinces of Ontario and Quebec. And as you mentioned off the top, if you were to put those jurisdictions together, it would represent roughly a $6 trillion economy, U.S. dollars. That would make it the third largest economy in the world, third largest country in the world behind the United States and China in terms of economic activity.
That is a lot of dollar signs. And I want to ask you all this, the next question, but Gail, I will start with you. A lot of industries need help to recover from COVID-19. What's the business case for pumping more government money right now into the Great Lakes region? Gail?
Oh, well, exactly as Mark said. I mean, this is a $6 trillion economy. It's worth more than 50% of binational trade between Canada and the United States. So whatever happens in the Great Lakes region affects both nations profoundly. And stimulus in the way of a new green economy, if you will, could change the course of history in the Great Lakes region and make us a leader globally.
And Mayor Sendzik?
So in terms of the impact on municipalities, when you look at the importance of the Great Lakes, it's really driven by the municipalities. Look at the population that lives along the Great Lakes, both on the American and Canadian side. And that alone has such an important impact on the North American economy. And this is why infrastructure is so important for our message to the federal government, both on the American and the Canadian side.
And Mark, what about you? Why should the government be giving this region more money?
Well, I think as Gail rightly pointed out, this region is North America's economic engine. I think when we talk about the United States-Canada economic partnership, we really are talking about the Great Lakes region in many ways. So whether we're talking about building a workforce for the future, whether we're talking about the future of innovation and trying to convince people that this is the place to innovate as opposed to the West Coast or the East Coast, whether it's investing in infrastructure from our multimodal freight transportation systems to water infrastructure, this really is a region that if you invest properly, will drive your future competitiveness, your prosperity, and your sustainability.
So whenever we ask for money, people want to know what the return on investment would look like. Gail, I'd like to start with you.
Well, in the last couple of years, a few colleagues of mine and myself did some research on exactly that. There are these degraded locations around the Great Lakes. There were 43 geographic locations on rivers and ports and harbors. And when you look at investing in restoring the health of the ecosystem, you're actually looking at anywhere from $3 to $20 return on investment for every dollar spent on restoring natural assets, because people are driven to coastal communities. Property values soar when you clean up the waterways. Businesses flourish, job employment flourishes, retention of employees is increased because of the beauty of the region. So for every dollar invested in cleaning up these degraded locations, the areas of concern they're called, we're seeing massive returns on investment within 3 to 5 to 10 years. So it's a very smart investment in cleaning up the environment and yet creating jobs and building the economy.
And Mayor Sendzik?
Yeah, when you look at what we have right now as an ask in front of the federal government in Canada for $7 billion to focus its infrastructure stimulus spending on water infrastructure. And when we look at that, we look at the job creation that comes from investing in the infrastructure. And when I talk about that, what does it look like? It's clean water infrastructure, it's wastewater infrastructure, and it's the infrastructure that is really underneath towns and cities across Ontario that border the Great Lakes. And as we reinvest in this infrastructure, we can add capacity in. When you add capacity, that means you can generate more commercial investment, more industrial investment, and more residential investment. And that compounds that idea that we could be creating more long-term jobs in addition to the short-term jobs that come from the construction.
And Mark, I'm kind of ashamed to say this on TV, but I will say it. I've lived in Ontario for maybe close to 30 years and in Toronto for over 20 years, but I've never been to the Scarborough Bluffs until COVID-19 hit. And it's spectacular, and I feel so lucky to have this in my backyard. Tourism to the Great Lakes, of course, much like many other things, has taken a huge hit due to the pandemic. But when things start picking up again, what is the potential for tourism growth in the region, considering people might not be traveling outside of the province or even the country for a while?
Yeah, great question. We did some research a couple years ago about the Great Lakes travel and tourism economy, and what we found is while we have a sizable industry here, based on global baselines and parameters, we weren't necessarily competing, I think, as well as we could be with other global peers and jurisdictions. That was a weakness at the time. We found that most of the travelers are actually day trippers and regional. So what I've been saying to a lot of policymakers is that our weakness has now become our strength during the pandemic, because people do want to stay close to home. They do want to experience, I think, the Great Lakes, and we need to be showing them every opportunity, within a 3, 4 hour, 5 hour drive, these great destinations and experiences that they can get to. Obviously with the border closed, it's a bit more complicated. But whether you're a U.S. traveler trying to explore the 8 Great Lakes states, or people who are in Ontario and Quebec who are wanting to explore parts of Canada in this region that they've never seen before, there's just so much beauty, within such a short period of time, short drive, I should say. And so I see there's a huge opportunity there, but we have to promote it and market it the right way and get people out visiting the lakes and visiting these great destinations.
And Mayor Sendzik, as a mayor, is that an exciting prospect to think that people, you might be able to get some of that tourism dollars?
Well, look, St. Catharines is in the heart of Niagara, right next door to Niagara Falls, and we can see the impact of COVID-19 here in the Niagara community. And Niagara Falls is the tourism sector has taken a significant hit due to COVID-19. And what we're looking at is how do we rebuild, or how do we enhance our natural assets? And so people are attracted to Niagara Falls, but Niagara is also between 2 Great Lakes, Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. And so we've got 2 shorelines. And I think Mark's correct. If we can harness this right, if we can reinvest even in the tourism aspects that support and showcase our Great Lakes, we'll get more people coming into our region to explore all the natural beauty that we have to offer.
And the next question I'd like to ask Gail and Mark Sendzik. Flooding has been a major issue along the Great Lakes. What needs to be done on that front when investing in this area? Gail, I'd like to start with you.
Oh, that's a terrific question as well. With the changing climate, we're seeing these flash floods. We just had one a few days ago here in Ontario, and it's causing backup of sewers into people's basements and very huge damage. But there are ways of controlling the stormwater floods by using green soft engineering, if you will, rain gardens, bioswales. And what we do when we soften our surfaces, when we let the rain come back down into the ground, we lessen this flooding potential. So anything that we do that enhances wetlands, absorbs the water, anything we do with soft green engineering for like I said, bioswales or detention ponds, stormwater ponds, rainwater harvesting off of our roof. I mean, that's free water rather than using treated water, which is electrically expensive or energy intensive. So all of the things that could improve the way that we absorb water into our ground actually creates habitat, creates natural systems, creates amenities. Wetlands are huge birders' paradise. So there are ways of investing in green infrastructure. We heard the mayor talk just previously. Both my colleagues talk about infrastructure, and I would like to emphasize green infrastructure that slows down the water, lets it soak into the ground, and prevents that devastating floods.
Can you give us Can you give us an example? What would green infrastructure look like?
So instead of having a pipe going from your rooftop into a sewer and then maybe overflowing somewhere, you put that pipe into a container that you then store that rainwater and use it for irrigation in your property. Or if you have a paved parking lot, you put in porous pavers, which allow the rain to go through instead of running off asphalt or concrete. It actually goes into the ground and restores groundwater recharge and lessens the amount of water running off of hard surfaces and going into as I said, into our basements.
And Mayor Sendzik?
So yeah, I'm gonna build on what Gail was talking about. We've got a great experience, or it was an unfortunate experience last year, but a great example of what happens during a flood. So within 45 minutes in St. Catharines, right close to Lake Ontario, we had the most amount of rainfall in 45 minutes in the history of our city. It flooded out 500 homes. And when the engineers were looking at the cause of this, one of the causes was because the high water of Lake Ontario, the discharge pipe of stormwater into Lake Ontario was now below, actually in the water, whereas previously it would be above the water based on its construction way back 25, 30 years ago. So this pipe was now in the water based on the high waters of Lake Ontario. So all that water coming through our system that would traditionally go into Lake Ontario as stormwater was then backed up. And that was one example of now we've got to completely re-engineer that outtake pipe to be above the waters of Lake Ontario. And then we have to look at ways to divert, as Gail was talking about, a lot of that rainwater that's coming off the roofs and through our road systems. And so these are hard engineering projects that are going to cost a considerable amount of money. But if we don't do it now, the insurance coverage on these homes is going to be unaffordable. So it's just a cascading impact. And that's why we're saying accelerate the investment in water-based infrastructure to try and push back at these extreme events and try and make our communities more resilient, more sustainable as we face climate change.
Because the benefits will be tenfold in the future.
Very much, very much.
When we talk about opportunities, Mark, what opportunities for other sectors do you see in this region?
Well, I think obviously beyond the environment sector that we've been thinking about, water technology obviously is an important aspect of that conversation as well. But this is a region where we typically think about the auto sector, manufacturing being such a dominant force, and it is. Through the Auto Pact, we created the Great Lakes Auto Cluster, which is by far still the world's biggest center hub for auto production and research and design. But there's a lot going on in this region in terms of aerospace and space technology. There's lots going on in this region in terms of agriculture, agri-food. Naturally, one would look to out west as being the epicenter of the food economy. I would argue that there's a lot happening in the Great Lakes, both in terms of food science, but also the import-export of food products across the border. So there's great potential there. Thinking about the pandemic, we have some of the world's best medical research facilities, life sciences companies, headquartered in the region. So I think we could be leading the charge in terms of finding a solution to the pandemic and other life science and healthcare challenges. Clean energy, again, people forget that this is quite a sizable energy region and hub from nuclear to hydro to renewables. Again, I think with our universities and our industry working together, we could be a forerunner for, I think, some of the more emerging technologies and solutions for making that clean energy shift in the region. So, there's a lot of exciting things that are happening in the region. And I think for us as an organization, we're trying to think through for business and government, how best we can do that. Because when we do work across sectors and borders, we certainly will be more prosperous and competitive and sustainable as a region. And I think that's a positive thing. We do live in a global economy. And it's time that we started thinking and acting as a region, in that global competitive environment and marketplace.
And with so much beauty there and towns, I'm guessing too it's a bit of a balancing act. So how then do you balance the need for economic growth and environmental
Sure.
protection?
Great question. So you will not find many companies, particularly large companies in the Great Lakes, where if I think about Dow or Procter and Gamble or SC Johnson, who are all headquartered here, 3M, I think they've learned some hard lessons in the past, and they have embedded sustainability in everything they do today and their future. You just think about plastics, and we can have a whole show just on plastics. But I know that a lot of companies are really taking the charge in trying to end plastic waste, but also to try and create more circularity in the economy. So we're continuing to use valuable products. Reduce, reuse, recycle, a phrase coined by Pollution Probe. 30, 40 years ago, we're still struggling to do that. A lot of our valuable waste still goes to landfill. So I think companies are really wanting to be at the forefront of this sustainability conversation and really helping our create jobs and competitiveness, but do that in a safe and sustainable way and protecting the environment. Back to Gail's point about the return on investment, if you look at what's happening in Buffalo, in Cleveland, in Detroit, through those massive investments in those areas, it's now creating a resurgence of growth in those cities. And so this is as much a smart environmental play as it is an economic play, and we fully support that.
And I want to ask Gail and Mayor Sendzik that same question. How do you balance the need for economic growth and environmental protection? I'll start with you, Gail.
Yeah, that dialectic doesn't exist. I mean, we think, well, we invest in the economy, then the environment suffers. We invest in the environment and then the economy suffers, and that's a fallacy. The two go hand in hand. If you don't have a healthy environment, people are not going to want to be where you want to set up your business. So if you invest in the environment and improve that quality, people want to come and stay there and work there and play there and invest there. So and if you have a strong economy, to Mark's point, like the notion of the triple bottom line really is the business mantra of the 21st century. It is make sure that your people are healthy and safe and socially secure. Make sure that your economic growth is strong and viable and you have jobs for people, and make sure that you're protecting the environment at the same time so people are healthy and they have a job. It all goes hand in hand, and there is no do we invest in one or do we invest in other. Both are synergistic and build on the strength of each other.
Mayor Sendzik?
And from our point of view, they go hand in hand. And what municipalities have to do, though, is we have to correct some of the past actions of industry as well. So that's where the burden gets shifted to the lower tier municipalities. And that's why we're asking the federal and provincial government to step up on some of the infrastructure so that we can correct those past mistakes that businesses have made. And what I'm explaining is, Hamilton, you look at Hamilton, St. Catharines, we're industrial cities. And so some of our water courses have been polluted with heavy metals. And so we have to continue to work to clean those up. And in doing so, we can unlock the economic potential that goes along with, as Gail was talking about previously, unlocking that economic potential for areas that have traditionally been industrial areas. And that goes again to protecting our environment, and it goes to protecting our waterways as well.
A year ago, none of us could have imagined what life is like. And I keep hearing people making jokes, 2020 will 2020. But we're finding a lot of information about COVID-19. And Gail, what's been an outcome to this pandemic related to the Great Lakes that you'd like to see further explored?
So interesting. Your viewers may or may not know that if anybody has COVID-19, they release virus particles in their feces, which get into their wastewater treatment plants. So if you are not being tested, or if you're asymptomatic, you may very well be still passing the feces through your into the wastewater treatment plant. So if we measure virus particles in wastewater treatment plants, it gives us a real-time and much more accurate picture of what's going on in the pandemic here in the Great Lakes region, and in fact in a city or even in a neighborhood. So if your city is opening into phase 3 and all of a sudden you see a spike in the COVID-19 sensors that we can detect in wastewater treatment plants, it's an alert that something's going wrong, and you can go into the sewer shed, if you will, upstream, and sample what's going into the sewers and see, oh, in this community it's high, in this community it's low. Well, what's going on in this community? Maybe there's a bunch of schools that opened. Maybe there's a long-term care facility in that region. And then you can start tailoring how you deal with the spread of COVID very specifically. And for cities, particularly, entering into this new phase 3 of opening, it's a powerful tool to enable you to open safely. In fact, even once we have the vaccine, how long might we stay immune? And if people are not being tested because they don't feel sick, we can still detect whether the COVID is going up or down for the long term. And this actually means, talking about infrastructure, it's not cheap to do this, but it's absolutely necessary to be able to do this. And so one of the things that we're doing, we have a team at McMaster who's putting together a consortium of wastewater operators across Ontario to understand what is their ability, what is the ability of remote communities to do this, what is the ability of First Nations to do this, is there an equitable ability across the board for all municipal wastewater treatment plants to actually track COVID, and if not, then we need federal and provincial investment in that infrastructure to keep people safe.
Wow, it is incredible to think about all the ways that everything is connected. I would never have thought about that. And speaking of connected, we know our neighbors to the south are in an election year, and considering this region is binational, Mark, how is it affected by what's been going south of the border, including President Trump's recent decision to restore a 10% tariff on Canadian aluminum imports?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about the good, bad, and the ugly as it relates to the United States. Back to Mayor Senzik's point of view on investing in the environment, I would say that over the last 10 plus years, the United States, and this has been a binational effort, bipartisan effort, they've invested well over 2.2, close to $3 billion now over 10 years to clean up and to protect and restore the Great Lakes. Canada is not investing anywhere near that amount of money, and that's why our organization, along with Mayor Senzik's organization, Great Lakes Fisheries Commission, asked the federal government to step up and commit $2.2 billion over 10 years to get back on track, and I think to make those investments that will protect our Great Lakes for the future. So that's one point. In terms of the politics of the region, the Great Lakes states generally are the deciders in the election. I don't see that being any different this time around. And these states have been hard hit by uncertainty around what was happening with NAFTA, obviously what's happening now with tariffs. The manufacturing base in this region is really what produces the products that people use right across North America. So just look at aluminum and Whirlpool and appliances. These are integrated supply chains that are going to hurt everybody. So the tariffs don't make sense, and everybody knows that. But as you said, we are going into an election year, and the president, I think, for whatever reason, is going to use every tool in his toolbox to convince Americans that he's there for America. But I think people have to wise up and realize that the tariffs, when they're applied by any country, usually do more harm to their local industries and citizens than they do to their trade ally. In this case, their very best ally, Canada. And most of their aluminum has to come from Canada because they just don't produce enough. So we are certainly frustrated by some of the actions that are taking place on the U.S. side, particularly at the federal level. We don't know why Congress hasn't stepped up and stepped in. They do have the authority over international trade. I think they've given the president a lot of discretion on this issue. And then at the subnational level, obviously we're hearing from governors and mayors like Mayor Senzik and his counterparts that they want to deepen their relationship with Ontario and Quebec and Canada because we're their number one trading partner. And if that relationship doesn't work, their communities don't work, their businesses don't work, and that's just not what they want. So we want to, obviously in an economic agenda that is progressive, that is modern, that's going to try and get more out of this relationship. And, we're hopeful that, we can get there with, more collaboration and conversations across the border in key sectors.
As with fascinating discussions, the time goes by very fast. I have maybe 2 minutes left, but I wanted to get your insights from all of you on this last question. How much money is actually needed to see some of the economic growth we've been talking about? Mayor Senzik, I'd like to start with you.
So, from our perspective, looking at what the municipalities have outlined and the ones that we've surveyed, we're looking at about $7 billion to invest in water-based infrastructure, and that will create jobs. It will stimulate the economy, and I think most importantly is it builds sustainability back into all of our municipalities along the Great Lakes. And this is probably one of the most important investments we can make for the future sustainability of our communities. So that's where that $7 billion comes from.
And Mark?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think nestled within that is the asset we made to the federal government for the 2.2 billion over 10 years to support the Great Lakes. So obviously that's an important investment, but investment in the future of work, innovation, those investments are priceless, right? So now's the time to do it as part of our economic recovery and try to do that with our neighbors to the south.
And Gail?
So I can't add a better number than those two numbers, but I can emphasize that if we're coming out of a recession and what we need is job creation, then those jobs need to be in the area where my two colleagues have said where it's a sustainable system. So those jobs are not about building more highways. Those jobs are about building innovative solutions, innovative water technology. I could not emphasize that more, especially with the COVID umbrella over us. So anything that creates jobs in a green way that protects the environment, improves social well-being is badly needed. And in this region, given the population density of the region, it would be a great boon to both nations.
Thank you so much. We've run out of time. We really appreciate your insights and you taking the time to speak with us tonight. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
The Agenda in the Summer with Nam Kiwanuka is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.